right. Check one, two. We are live for the first podcast episode of the Confidence Coaching Clinic. My name is Rome Madison, and I'm going to be coming to you live stream every Tuesday, a weekly show here on YouTube. And for those who may not know me or follow my YouTube channel, it's romemadison.com where you can find all the things that I do. I'll introduce myself in a minute and why I decided to launch this live stream called the Confidence Coaching Clinic. I'm a keynote speaker on the topic of confidence and innovation. I'll get into my background shortly, but I'm also a confidence coach for organizations, for commercial organizations, sales organizations. I come from the life science industry. For those who may not be familiar with that, the life science industry is everything to do with genetics. 20 years ago, they sequenced the human genome. We now know every gene in the human body. We don't know the function of many of them. And I was fortunate enough to get in this industry on the front end of its growth. 1 year after the Human Genome Project was completed, I got into the industry and have grown since then. But I really appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, this will be a weekly show. I have another podcast that is focused on life sciences. It's called Genetics for Healthcare. It's a podcast for patients where we share patient stories, patient lenses, patient stories who've gone through cancer, battling cancer, conquering cancer, who've made decisions with their healthcare to prevent a cancer diagnosis, similar to Angelina Jolie, who did a prophylactic mastectomy. She cut her breast off and got, I guess, better fake ones. I guess I don't know if they're better, but they're certainly not her original breast tissue that has a predisposition because of a BRCA gene that she inherited to be cancerous. So she made that decision. Genetics for Healthcare is all about how to become a more effective advocate for precision medicine approach to your healthcare. Now, why is that relevant to you? It's because this is something, when I got into the industry, I don't have a science background. I'm not a PhD, didn't go to medical school. I'm self-taught. And I'll share that story with you and what that looked like here shortly. But through the Confidence Coaching Clinic that I deploy for corporations in the life science industry, pharmaceutical manufacturers, diagnostic companies, research organizations. I coach people leaders and high value employees to help them activate their confidence, activate their personal power at critical moments. Those of you who know who've been in leadership roles or leadership positions, whether it is through your job and what you do professionally or through volunteer organizations, you know that once you get in that seat, the seat is pretty hot because everybody has an opinion. No one wants to do the work. Everybody has a pocket full of rocks to throw, but no tools to help you build anything. Everybody has an opinion and they'll offer it freely, but when it comes to action, they're nowhere to be found. So for leaders who are in those positions, the Confidence Clinic helps them activate their personal power, ground themselves in the moment to come across with more influence, to become more persuasive, and to exemplify executive presence, a commanding presence that instills confidence in others just by the way you show up. So it's important to understand how you can activate your confidence for anything that you want to do in your life. And so what this podcast is going to offer, this live stream is going to offer, is spot coaching. On the spot, I'm willing to take calls for anybody who is struggling with something that they want or need to do and need to be coached through it. And my disclaimer is this is appropriate for any area of your life except relationships. I am not a relationship coach. There are plenty of them out there. But when it comes to business, when it comes to making up your mind, when it comes to difficult conversations, even with family, even though that is a sort of relationship, we have to approach difficult conversations very pragmatically because they have to be done. You can't run from difficult situations and difficult conversations. They have to be done. And you can activate your confidence in that moment. In a negotiation, you have to activate your confidence in that moment to get more of what you want. And it's usually the person who's able to maintain their poise and their discipline and their vision of what they want who usually wins negotiation. I love what John, no, it is there is a wonderful podcast that I listen to that I'm drawing a blank on here. It is called, let me look that up. Since this is live stream, there will be issues like this where your boy has brain farts. John Hope Bryant and his podcast that I love is called Money and Wealth. But what he says is a good negotiation is where two people walk away slightly annoyed. Nobody gets everything that they want. But with confidence, you can get as much as you can when negotiating with another confident person. And that's just the beginning. You can always negotiate more later, but it's about getting what you want. And to do that, you've got to come across with a certain level of resolve. You've got to be more influential than the other person. You've got to be more persuasive than the other person to help them see what they cannot see yet. And when you speak with a level of confidence, when you're grounded in a level of confidence and you show up and you don't have to say a word, they see it all over you. It shows up in the way that you stand. It shows up in the magnitude of your personality. It shows up on the countenance on your face. They sense your confidence, and confidence is critical to anything that you want in life. One of the reasons why I decided to do this podcast is I work with a lot of high achievers. These are executives. These are very accomplished athletes or business owners. In a certain aspect of their life, people will look at them and say that they're highly successful and inspired to be like them in different aspects of their life. But they suffer from imposter syndrome. I don't know if you can relate to that, but imposter syndrome is defined as the persistent belief that you either don't have what it takes or you don't believe with a deep sense of integrity that you can be successful, despite the fact at looking at your past results, your history, your track record shows that you have what it takes to get what you want, to be successful in any endeavor that you have. And that persistence of doubt is still there. It's imposter syndrome. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is a thing. And some of the most successful and famous people in the history of the world have dealt with imposter syndrome. Elvis Presley dealt with imposter syndrome. Think about this. In the 1950s, Elvis was the most famous person in the world. And the only thing that was truly transcendent in terms of a communication medium was radio. And they knew what he looked like. There was no internet. There wasn't satellite television. There wasn't, smartphones where you can go on apps. But yet you can travel to distant parts of the world and they knew what Elvis Presley looked like because of his success, because of his fame, because of his notoriety and the songs that played around the world. But despite all of that success, Elvis Presley suffered from depression. He suffered from alcoholism and drug abuse to drown his sorrows from that empty feeling that he felt. And that is a part of what we get into here in the Confidence Coaching Clinic. And we'll share more on that in future episodes. But if you can relate, and I'm not saying everybody can, hey, this may not be the conversation for you. But if you've dealt with imposter syndrome, if you've dealt with doubts, another demographic I deal with and coach and have many friends who are in this stage of life are those who are trying to transition from full-time employee to full-time employer. Maybe you've done well in your corporate career, but there's come a time where you've been the victim of a layoff or an early retirement, and you know you still have years of good production left in you, your peak earning years, your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom. You can give to an organization and be of high value to that organization, but you're finding yourself having to compete with people half your age who are making half or less than your salary. So you're falling victim to people who, at this age and at your state, whether you like it or not, you just have to deal with it. And you might have to take a lesser position, a lower salary to continue earning until you can someday retire. Another thing that inspires me is I love the creative young people, those who are in their teens, their 20s. I've got two teenage daughters, and they think completely different than me, my brother who's 10 years younger than me, the generations that I know. And I'm excited about what they're going to be because they see the world completely differently. There are brilliant people out there that college may not be an option for you, but that won't stop you from owning your destiny, from building a business that keeps you as busy as you want to be and create the lifestyle that you truly want. That someday you may be able to have a successful exit, selling that business or licensing that business. All of those things. I love being inspired by those creative people. And so I coach them to show up in a way, despite their youth, despite their lack of experience or knowledge, to show up in a way to express their thoughts and ideas in a way that inspires others because of the confidence and enthusiasm they present those ideas with. I used to mentor and developed a coaching program for ex-offenders who would be in jail and be ready for reentry. And we would coach them on life skills and entrepreneurial skills. And we used to equip them with the knowledge that despite their record, despite their past, that if you show up in a way and speak and communicate in a way that inspires people, that pulls them in, that gets them enrolled in your vision, where they can see the big picture, and they also see a vision for themselves inside of that big picture. It doesn't matter what your background is. These are all elements of confidence that you can activate in key moments that allow you to project in a way to show up that people want to follow. They want to do business with you. They want to enroll in your program. So what's my background? How do I know all this stuff? Well, to the high level here, as I mentioned, I spent the last 2 decades in the life science industry. The year that the Human Genome Project completed was around 2003, 2004. Project that took around $13 billion. or 100 billion, something in that area. Took 13 years to complete. And at that time, genome sequencing, it maybe cost, $10,000 to sequence someone's genome, and you'll get, a terabyte or more, a gigabyte more of data that you can't do much with, right? Today, you can get a whole genome sequence, and most people can put it on their credit card or pay out of pocket. And you get some vital information that you can make healthcare decisions with. Well, back then, there was not a lot of knowledge. There was not a lot of application for that. And I worked for the first company that had any type of test that identified cancer patients most or least likely to benefit from chemotherapy at the time. And I was self-taught. The year before I started working in that organization, I had to go to Barnes and Nobles, Borders Books. I mean, you guys do know that we used to have bookstores where we went and bought books and brought our coffee, but now we have coffee shops where we go buy coffee and bring our books. So I studied at those Barnes and Nobles, at those Borders Books. I got the books off the shelf because at the time I was unemployed for nearly a year. My life was in shambles. My mother, who raised us as a single mom, I've got the typical story: raised by a single mom, on welfare. Didn't have a relationship with my father until I was 17. I knew where he was, I knew who he was, but I just did not have a relationship with him. He didn't call and check on me. He didn't call me for my birthday. He didn't buy me that bike for Christmas. I don't dwell on those things because I've learned that what happens to everybody in some respect. There's other people who didn't grow up with a dad. There's other people who, maybe did, but their father was absent or abusive. So, backgrounds matter. This is not a counseling show. I completely encourage you to seek professional counseling to heal your wounds. And that's just continuing to stay in a pattern of growth. So I'm a big advocate of people who seek out counseling. I have for years, and I continue to do so. You never get there. There might not be a there. It's just the journey. And as long as you're traveling this road of life, I would always encourage you to continue to grow and stretch yourself. But that's why I don't dwell too much on my past, because it's just my story. And even though it's my story, and people can relate to it, I'm not a victim of it, right? I own it. So yes, I had a single mom who raised 3 kids, but my mother was the first college graduate in our family. Graduated from the University of Texas with a degree in business while working full time and raising 2 kids. My brother was 10 years younger than me, and my mother fell into a tough life when you are a single mom raising now 3 kids. It's hard to make a living. It's hard to be upwardly mobile and take advantage of the education or college degree that she got to improve our quality of life, because you've now got 3 mouths to feed, and one of those is a baby, and to a teenager and a 10, 11-year-old. So those circumstances are tough for any woman. And for my mother, it drove her to mental health challenges. My mother was eventually diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia. And during my teenage years, we were separated. So she was in and out of the mental health system, still, raising my brother somehow. And once she got out, she was able to maintain, our lifestyle. My sister graduated. I was growing up, but I dealt with all the issues, the rejection, the abandonment issues, the mother and father wounds that haunt us in life if we don't deal with them, the verbal abuse. I dealt with all those things. And as a result, I didn't have much esteem. I didn't have great self-esteem. I barely had self-confidence. But eventually, because of my skill, my athletic prowess, I got attention for what I could do. Um, I was halfway cute back then, and the girls loved the brother. So I had some confidence with the ladies. And so I fell into what Elvis and many others dealt with: high self confidence, because we got the attention and affirmation from others because of what we could do, because of our skill, because of our talent, because of our gifts, but suffered from low self esteem because our identity became wrapped in those things that we got affirmation from, but never worked on loving and accepting who we are aside from those gifts or talents, because those things contribute to certainly who we are, but they don't make us who we are. So, absent of your ability to do those things, you still have to find a way to love and appreciate and accept who you are. And that's a lifelong journey for many people, and it has been for me. So, the reason I say all of this is because I know this path very well. Despite the fact that I'm self-taught in the life science industry, I went on to stand up three different companies, go from startups to successful exits. Two of them were acquired. One of them had an IPO, and I spent 3 years navigating a public company, the largest genetic testing company in the space, restructuring that company twice in 2 years and taking it into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was delisted from the stock exchange and acquired by another public company. I've seen the ups and downs of both entrepreneurship and corporate leadership. I've had the successes and the victories, both financial, being recognized, earning the big salary and the bonuses. And now I've turned that into exactly what I've been sharing with you: how to go from full-time employee to full-time employer. I now run my own consulting firm for the life science industry that deals with business strategy, how to get products to market, how to create a strategy long term, but also sales enablement. I'm a keynote speaker. I have books and I have coaching programs that target people leaders, because all success and failure inside of organizations deal with leadership. So I approach coaching with a framework that I've created over the years called the Madison Method. And this is my coaching methodology. And I'll share this with you. And this will be a setup for all the podcasts to come. And this is what I believe is the reason that businesses and people ultimately fail in what they do, because they don't have one or more of these things when it comes to having confidence that succeeds. The first thing is self-acceptance. This is true for an individual, it's true for organizations. The second thing is self-competence. It's true for individuals, true for organizations. And the third thing is strategy. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what strategy is. Hell, there's a lot of misconceptions about what self-acceptance and self-competence is. But let's get into this, because this is the coaching methodology, and this is how I coach people who will come to this live stream to get feedback on whatever it is, whether it's your business, your a decision that you're struggling with, how to have difficult conversations, maybe with your children, your friends, family members, because it's really tough to do that with people that you care about. But you can activate your confidence to show up in a way to get the best possible outcomes from that conversation, to get the best possible outcome from that decision, to make good decisions that you can benefit from, not only in the moment, but build upon that momentum for years to come with whatever you're creating or trying to establish. So the framework goes like this. The first building block of unshakable confidence is self-acceptance. Now, this is different from self-love. It's not self-acceptance doesn't necessarily mean self-love, but self-love is the highest order of self-acceptance, and that's what we all want to get to. But self-acceptance just means accepting yourself as you are, to stop comparing yourself to somebody else. And I'll be the first to say that we naturally, as human beings, will compare ourselves to other people. It's just something that we do. It's a measuring stick for ourselves. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but when we assign meaning to our differences, that's when it becomes a negative aspect of our psychology. Because it's natural to say, hey, that guy is tall, dark, and handsome, and I'm short, dark, and handsome. Oh, he gets all the girls because he's taller. He's over 6 feet. I'm only 5'7". That's comparison and assigning meaning to why he has the desirable outcomes that you want. But the reality is there's nothing stopping you from getting what you want. It's only the belief that you can't have it. So just accepting yourself as you are. One of the greatest college football coaches of all time, I'll go ahead and call him the greatest football coach of all time, college football coach of all time. Nick Saban used to say this about the University of Alabama team every year, though they were ranked number one in the playoffs. He won multiple national championships. He would always tell his team not to read the press. Don't believe the hype of what they're saying about their team. He called it rat poison. The reasons why is because these sports writers would always sing their praises by comparing them to other teams. And guess what? That's what happens. It's sport. You, on a weekly basis, whether it's football or any other sport, basketball is nightly, they're constantly comparing this team to somebody else because that's their job. That's their job, to create controversy and get people excited or pissed off to call in because that's entertainment. He called it rat poison. What he's trying to get them to zero in on is who they really are. Because no matter what your record shows, no matter how much success you have, there's still opportunities for you to grow. There's still areas that you need to pay attention to. You're not so great in one area that you can just hide or not pay attention to areas that you need to improve in. This is what we talk about with self-acceptance. No matter how good you are, no matter how bad you are, no matter how great you've been, no matter how bad you suck, just accept it. You don't have to attach a meaning to those things. Just accept them as they are, because once you accept that, that allows you to activate your personal power, to grow from it, to improve upon it, to leverage it if it's a strength of yours. All of those things make you who you are, and you've got to accept all that you are. You don't have to be more than what you are, but it behooves you to be all that you are because it's your gift to the world. Don't compare yourself to anybody else because you're the only you will ever be. And guess what? You were created perfectly. My favorite book says that you are wonderfully made. You are crafted just the way God intended you to be, because you have a purpose in this world. If you look at your fingers, there are 10 fingerprints that have never existed in the world. You can travel the world to touch a dish, a cup, a piece of paper, and your fingerprint can be traced all the way back to you. And that's because you were meant to make your mark in this world. Accept that. Before you can get to self-love, you've got to accept who you are in its fullness. So I encourage you to take inventory. What are those things that people constantly give you compliments on? They're telling you something. They're telling you of your value to the universe. What are your gifts? Gifts are things that you were born with. Some people have the gift of singing. They just have a voice and they're not using it. Maybe they do use it, but it's a gift. They didn't have to develop it, they came with it. Some people have a gift of strength, right? Samson. Other people they're just naturally strong. They didn't necessarily have to develop that. They certainly refined it and nurtured it, but they didn't have to do anything for it. Those are gifts. So make a list of your gifts. Gifts can be physical and they can also be spiritual gifts. Some people have a ability to discern, wisdom. That can be a gift. Some people have the gift of interpreting, right? They can take complex things and simplify them in a way where people who have no association with it can truly understand it. That's a gift. That's a spiritual gift of interpretation and communication, right? Those are gifts. But also, you have talents. Talents are things that you develop over time, like playing the piano. Nobody came here knowing how to play the piano like the day that they were born. But when they started, maybe they took to it. Maybe it took them a while to learn, but they fell in love with the challenge and they became concert pianists. Those are talents. Maybe you can sing or dance or have a propensity for math or engineering, science. Whatever your talents are, write your gifts and talents down. But here's the other thing: write down the things that you wish you were better at. Some things don't matter, forget about it. But some things do matter to you. And the tendency is we lean into our strengths and run away from our deficiencies. If you know it's a deficiency, I say attack it, or at least identify the fact that it is a deficiency. And then you have the opportunity to do something about it or not. Does it serve you to develop it? What do you want to do if you were to develop that deficiency? This is all in the area of self-acceptance. Here's a great story. Self-acceptance takes a level of humility that is not common to us as human beings. In the 840 BC in Greece, the story goes, the oracle at Delphi proclaimed Socrates to be the wisest man in all of Greece. But when Socrates heard this, as notable as he was, as highly intelligent as he was, Socrates didn't respond like, hey, it's about time somebody noticed my brilliance. The way that he responded was with tremendous humility, because he said, if I'm the smartest, the wisest man in all of Greece, then who will I learn from? So what he did was he took to the countryside. He took to Athens and went to the universities, the synagogues, the astrologers, because in that day, the way they used to vet knowledge and learn, the scholars came together to debate. And so in open forum, they would debate what they know. And obviously you had to be, confident to get up there to tout what you know. But what Socrates is reported to have observed is that these people who considered themselves wise and knowledgeable were so sure of what they know that they didn't allow outside information to challenge them. They stayed in a defensive posture and were really good at arguing with someone why they were right. And Socrates saw that and said, well, if you believe that you're the smartest, the wisest, the most knowledgeable, and you don't allow outside information to challenge what you know, how can you see the future differently? Because if all you know is what you know, what happens when things change? What happens when you're wrong? What happens when tragedy strikes? As the saying goes, man plans, God laughs. So Socrates is famous for saying, I know that I know nothing. And he proved that he was the smartest man of all of Greece because he was willing and humble enough and self-accepting enough to know that there are more things out there that could stretch him. He didn't rest on his laurels. He didn't pat himself on the back. He wanted to stay in a pattern of growth. And when you're humble enough and self-aware enough to constantly evaluate yourself and accept yourself as you are, but not accept staying where you are because you know this allows you to continue to grow. It allows you to be open. Humility conditions your ego to listen. Humility conditions your ego to listen. So when I'm working with organizations, when I'm working with people, we got to set a baseline to build this unshakable confidence on. So evaluate yourself. The good things about you, the things that embarrass you, that people give you compliments on, accept those things. Happens to me too. But this is a way to ground yourself, your baseline. So from there, this is how no one knocks you off your square because you know you better than anyone else, but you're always willing to listen because it's hard to see yourself in a room full of people because you're the only one that you cannot see. So they have an informed point of view. We have to be humble enough to accept those things. They may be true for you, they may not be true. But that humility gets us to a point of self-acceptance, enough to where we can work on ourselves and start to have unshakable confidence because you're not afraid for someone to come along and rock your boat and tell you something that you're not ready for, you haven't heard before. The second in this framework is self-competence. You've got to be proficient at something at a certain point in life. As men, we are producers. I believe that we are programmed to produce, and we won't be truly happy with ourselves unless we are productive. Now, that can mean anything that you want it to mean, but even going back to the Garden of Eden, Adam was given dominion in that garden to be productive. He didn't even have to do anything to let it grow, but his productivity was maintaining it, naming the animals, going around and surveying his kingdom. But we've got to be productive. And what builds confidence as much as anything is being confident in our ability to do things. Just talked about Elvis. Elvis, when he got on stage, confident. He was in his element. But unfortunately, when he walked off that stage, he was alone in the dark. That confidence does come from our levels of proficiency, our levels of competence. And we cannot see it as once we achieve a certain level that we're there, because you're either green and you're growing or you're ripe and you're rotting in life. Nothing stays the same. If you get to a point and you think you've arrived, Guess what? Somebody is behind you nipping on your heels. They're using you as motivation, their measuring stick as to what excellence might look like. And because they continue to work hard, they will eventually surpass you in their level of achievement and influence and persuasiveness and value. So it is your self competence that is another cornerstone of unshakable confidence. I love that 50 cents, 50 cent, 50 cent, 50 cents. 50 Cent, the rapper, Curtis Jackson. I like that name better, by the way. I was never crazy about 50 Cent as a rapper, but I am a raving fan of Curtis Jackson, the individual. When he came out with his album Get Rich or Die Trying, of which a movie was made, you can look up his story. He came from the streets, had a record deal, lost that record deal because he was shot, 9 times. But that didn't stop him. He continued to rap, even though his jaw was, he's shot in his jaw. He's continued to make records. He was determined, even in that state of being shot up, to continue to refine his confidence by becoming more competent in his craft, being a rapper, being a lyricist, being an artist. He didn't stop. Not only did he not stop in that endeavor, he didn't stop learning either. Do you know 50 Cent is I don't know if he's a billionaire, but multimillionaire. The man has television shows. He's got albums. He got other businesses. 50 Water with Vitamin Water was a strategic partnership that he did when Vitamin Water was launched. I don't know how many millions he made with that. This is live. I guess I could look it up. But I'm tremendously a fan of Curtis Jackson, the individual, because he never stopped improving. Still today, he's creating documentaries. He's producing movies and TV shows, docuseries. He's an incredible individual. I saw him rapping at the halftime show at Oklahoma and Alabama in the playoffs. I'm sure he flew in, rapped at halftime, and flew back to New York or wherever he was going. The man just does not stop. I love Curtis Jackson. And one of the best works that he's ever done is he partnered with Robert Greene, the author of the book 48 Laws of Power. And he wrote together with Robert Greene and 50 Cent, the 50th Law. Fearlessness in all its forms. I have the audiobook. It is absolutely fascinating listening to that book. It weaves 50 Cent's story along with other stories from history around how to activate your personal power and combat fear that comes naturally in our lives. Some experience it more than others, but it's a fascinating book. And you would never think that a guy from, Jamaica, Queens, who got shot 9 times, trying to make it as a rapper, would achieve those levels of success. It is competence. You're either green and you're growing, or you're ripe and you're riding. I mean, we can continue to look at some of the greatest artists of all time. Look at Michael Jordan. Do you know that Michael Jordan, before he won his first NBA championship, had won the scoring title 4 times? For some people, that's a career achievement. And if you never won an NBA championship or never won the championship in whatever sport or the highest pinnacle of achievement in whatever your field is, but you were individually recognized as the best, most people cool with that. Not Michael Jordan. Why? Because he had achieved that success as an individual. What's more than achieving something as an individual? Achieving it as a team, bringing people along with you, having other people to share those memories and those experiences with. That's awesome. Denzel Washington. I remember he was on a talk show, and of all the roles and the characters that he's played, the great movies, the memorable moments that he's created as an actor and an artist, he was asked by this person who was interviewing him. They said, "What is your favorite movie or role that you've done?" And what he said really shocked me because I was thinking of what he was going to say. He said that his favorite movie or his role is his next movie and role. Because no matter how much he's done in the past, he feels that he has more to give. No matter how much he's accomplished, no matter how many awards that he's won, he still wants to grow and stretch himself. He went back to Broadway and is working on stage instead of doing movies. Tremendous actor. But even he continues to stay in a pattern of growth to increase that level of self-competence, because you can always get better at something. So it's the process of mastery, and not mastery of a skill or trade or a talent. It's mastery of self. And mastery of self is the cornerstone of unshakable confidence, another cornerstone of unshakable confidence. So you've got self-acceptance, that we work toward self-love. We have self-competence, that is mastery of self. And then the third component is strategy. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about here? Like, so why is strategy a component of unshakable confidence? Well, strategy is a high level, long-term plan to achieve specific goals or dreams. Strategy is your vision. My favorite book says that people perish for their lack of vision. When you are not anchored and guided by something, which is your vision, a strategy, you will blow any way the wind takes you. And it's easy to become anxious, uncertain. It's easy to lose confidence when you really don't know where you're going or what you're trying to achieve. But when you're clear on where you're going, your strategy, and this is true for individuals, it's true for businesses. Anytime you take a wrong turn or anytime things happen to knock you off your path, it's easy for you to get back on track and snap right back into your habits, your practices, and your disciplines, because you don't lose sight of your strategy. So those three things, your self-acceptance of where you are as an individual or an organization, just own it. There's nothing wrong with facing it, because if you can't call a thing, you can't deal with it. You can't improve from it. Your self-competence, you know at what level you're operating at in your competencies. You know how proficient you are and you are not. You can't allow pride to sneak in and rob you from the opportunity to improve and grow. That is the process of self-mastery, to keep yourself in a pattern of growth. And then strategy. Now, I believe that when people lack confidence or organizations lack confidence in leaders, is because one of these three things are missing from the equation. And so for this live stream show that I'm going to do every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Central, you can catch this on YouTube. I will repurpose this on my podcast stream, and tune in. We're going to do live coaching with anything that you have challenges with, anything you want input from. I'll be here. You can call in. We can live chat. And hopefully it'll be a help or a service to someone else who's struggling, because I believe that none of us are as smart or better than all of us together. So follow me, RomeMadison.com. From there, you can check out all my social media platforms from the icons across the top of my homepage, and reach out if I can help you in any way with your business or your confidence. Send me a DM, even for show notes or for things that I've said on this show you want to ask about. It's helpful because I'll come back and address those things live here because I believe it helps people. So stay tuned, keep it locked, subscribe to this YouTube channel, subscribe to RomeMadison.com, wherever you get your podcast. We'll catch you next week.